Hi, and welcome to another installment of Math Basics with Mr. Besh. Today we look at the orders of operations. What this is a technique that allows us to do manual computation, basic math problems, parentheses, exponents, multiply, dividing, adding, and subtracting, and it tells us in the order in which we need to do these so that we make sure we get our answers right without using a calculator. That's the key. The orders of operations was invented long ago, like 1500s, but recently we've come up with some stuff in the last century to help us out a little bit. The common phrase PEMDAS is what I make all my students write on the top of their test. And what PEMDAS stands for is a catchy phrase, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. And what this is the hierarchy, the order in which I do my operations. Each of these words in this phrase represent an operation in math that I do in a computation problem. You see, the order in which I do this are parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, adding, and subtracting. When I look at an orders of operations problem, the first thing I do is if there's a set of parentheses, I need to do my operations in that set of parentheses. Next, from left to right, I got to find exponents. If there are exponents there, they need to be done next. Now, the number one common mistake that students normally make is this next step here. Because multiplication is usually written before division in a lot of text, students think you always multiply first, and that is wrong. You read the math problem like you read a novel from left to right. Whatever happens first, you do first. If multiplication comes first, you do multiplication. If division came first, you would do division. And last but not least, when parentheses, exponents, multiplying, and dividing are all gone from the math problem, and all you're left with is plus and minus signs, from left to right, you do your adding and subtracting. So now what I have is a whole handful of problems, example problems, that we're going to do step by step, showing you the orders of operations. Okay. So let's get to these now. So now using my parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, add, and subtracting, let's see if we do the order operations correctly. My first example problem, 3 plus 36 divided by 4 times 3. You go through all the steps starting at the top. If the step does not exist, you skip it and you move down. So there are no parentheses, so I move to the next step. Next step's exponents. There are none. So then I go to the next step, which is multiplying and dividing. I go from left to right. From left to right, the first multiplication or division symbol I see is surrounded by a 36 and a 4, and that's a division symbol. So the first thing I need to do is 36 divided by 4, which comes out to be 9. Now, this is the step that I have next. Notice I just bring everything else that I didn't do straight down. I keep working with my math problem. Showing your work, setting up your steps is so very important when doing your orders of operations. Next, from left to right, what do I do now? Well, no parentheses, no exponents. I am multiplying. So 9 times 3 needs to be my next step. And last but not least, I need to take the 3 plus 27, which comes out to be 30. Now, I want to caution you, if you have a step in your math problem, like on my second line, 3 plus 9 times 3, you can never add or subtract anything if there's a multiplication or a division operation that needs to be still done in the problem. And you got to remember that. So this was my first example that I had here. Second example, I tried to throw a little bit of everything involved here. Parentheses, exponents, everything going on. So the first step I have to do in this math problem is the operation in the parentheses, and that is 3 minus 1. So now I take care of 3 minus 1 first, that makes a 2. Now, just because a 2 is in parentheses, there's really nothing to do there. See the 5 out in front, 5 times 2? That's a multiplication step. We'll get to that in a second. If I wanted to, technically, I could drop those parentheses around the 2, and I will in a second. My next step in my orders of operations is I need to do 2 to the 3rd power, which means 2 times 2 times 2. As a result, that comes out to be 8. And now what I'm left with in my math problem is 5 times 2 times 8 minus 6. Now, going straight from left to right, my next steps are multiplying and dividing. I got 2 multiplication symbols, so I need to do them one by one going from left to right. My next step in the problem is my 5 times 2, which is going to make 10. Last but not least, I got 2 more steps. 10 times 8 is going to give me 80, and then 80 take away 6 is going to give me my answer to this problem, which comes out to be 74. And this is example number 2 with my orders of operations. Example number 3. First thing I do inside the parentheses. 2 plus 3 is going to give me 5. Now, here's a key phrase and one of the reasons why I threw this example problem on here. A lot of times students don't remember that if you have a number in front of a number in a set of parentheses, it means multiply. A lot of students want to do 5 divided by 5 first, and that is incorrect. The next step in the math problem is 4 times 5, which makes 20. Then 20 divided by 5 comes out to be 4. A lot of times when you're doing your orders of operations, you know you made a mistake when you get an answer that's a decimal or doesn't come out to be a whole number. The biggest mistakes that are made by students are errors when they do the operations incorrectly and they don't get decimals. They work out to be whole numbers. And students think they're doing them right, and as a result, they miss the question. So please be very careful when following your orders of operations and review your PEMDAS each and every step. Example number 4. Here we go. First thing I need to do is what's inside that set of parentheses, and that is 6 take away 5. And when I take 6 take away 5, I get 1. Now, the key here is your the parentheses and the 3 exponent. Because right now, if I read this, this means 3 out in front of parentheses, 3 times 1 to the 3rd power. Well, my next step in PEMDAS is not times 3, it's 1 to the 3rd power. And 1 to the 3rd power means 1 times 1 times 1. Oh boy, that was basic. 1 times 1 times 1 is just 1. And last but not least in my step, 3 times 1 is going to be 3. A lot of times students want to multiply by that 3 first out in front, and that's a problem, okay? Because that'll usually lead all the time to a wrong answer. So this was example number 4. Example number 5, from left to right. No parentheses here. I know people say, well, there's a parentheses around the 5. Yeah, but there's no operation in that parentheses. There has to be an operation that needs to be done. So the first step I do in this math problem is 9 to the 2nd power, which is 9 times 9, which makes 81. Then what I need to do from left to right is multiplication. 3 parentheses 5 means 3 times 5, which comes out to be 15. And last but not least, I need to combine these two together. And when I combine 81 and 15, I get 96. Example number 6. As you can see, very basic, straightforward example. No parentheses, no exponents, but there is a multiplication symbol smack dab in the middle, so that's my first step. 5 times 3 is going to make 15. And then last but not least, from left to right, like I read, plus and minus. 4 plus 15 is going to make 19. And then 19 take away 6 is my answer to example 6. Finally, my last example, example number 7. I had to throw an example in here with brackets, okay? Because brackets, all they are is a fancy parentheses. Now, when you see brackets, normally what that's telling you is there's another set of parentheses in the math problem. What you do is you go inside the brackets and your orders of operations starts all over again. You ask yourself, in the brackets, are there parentheses in the brackets? Then are there exponents in the brackets? And then so on and so on. Inside my brackets, the first step I do is 12 minus 4 because it's a parenthesis within a parenthesis. So 12 minus 4 is going to give me 8. Now, there's no exponents inside my brackets, so then I move to my next steps, which are multiplying, dividing. The next step I have to do is 8 times 2, which comes out to be 16. And then finally, inside my bracket, I need to combine together 16 plus 11 before I do anything else. A lot of times students want to point out, well, don't you divide by 3 first before you add? The answer to that is no, if you're adding or subtracting inside a set of parentheses or bracket. So my next step I have to do is 16 plus 11, which comes out to be 27. And then finally, 27 divided by 3, which makes 9. Remember when you're doing this, anytime you do your orders of operations, and if you get a value that doesn't quite work out, or you're seeing that it's leaning towards a fraction or a decimal answer, you know you made a mistake. Okay? This, ladies and gentlemen, is my orders of operations. I hope you found this lesson both helpful and informative.